Hi there. Hi everybody. How are you? And welcome back to this series I'm doing on how hormones influence, your mental health state, your mood, how you feel, and particularly how hormones can affect you cyclically through the month. So welcome back, and today I'm going to be talking about anxiety. So welcome to those of you who joined me last time, and for those of you that don't know me, my name is Naomi Judge. I'm a naturopath. And I help women connect the dots between their health, their hormones and their happiness. So I try and keep everything sort of revolving around hormones and how it influences not only how you feel, but your body, how you connect with others, how you might be in circumstances, how you might find some things, tasks more difficult than others, clumsiness, you name it. Hormones have a huge impact, which is actually really cool and exciting because it actually makes you feel empowered. Once you know that there are these things that are out there that are triggering the fact that you're clumsy, or the fact that you've got poor memory, or the fact that you get irritated and impatient all the time, once you understand that and you start tuning in and you start understanding those cyclic patterns and what's going on, it makes you feel so much more empowered, and you can get away from this feeling of it's just me, it's my personality, why am I like this, or that kind of fear of dread, like you can't do anything. And once you know it's your hormones, you can start to tweak them, you can start to help yourself, you can start to make positive changes to help your hormones. So today I'm excited to bring this one, and I have done one on anxiety before, but this is kind of a follow-up one because it's one of the biggest issues I see with clients. I get lots of questions, email questions, I get lots of clients asking me about this, and anxiety is one that can have been with you all your life. You may have been an anxious child and it's kind of been there underlying. Or maybe an event triggered it, maybe something happened that then triggered anxiety. Or you might find as you're getting closer to menopause that, mid-cycle, that ovulation, you start getting those heart palpitations, you start getting a little bit hot and sweaty, you start losing sleep. Those are all the signs that your hormones are starting to go out of balance. Now, if you've had it due to an issue, due to an occurrence, something happened to you, a trauma, or if you've had it since childhood, it doesn't mean you can't do anything with your hormones, because what you can do with your hormones is you can work on your hormones through lifestyle, nourishment, diet, supplements and support to actually balance your hormones, to get them into a better state to support your anxiety. The anxiety could be due to food intolerance, it could be due to gluten, it could be due to other things, but getting your hormones in balance is going to help you kind of see through the fog, see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to make you feel stronger, happier, more positive to deal with these other things. So today I just want to touch on a few hormones, and I'm going to go through and we're going to focus on anxiety, and I want to touch on a few of the hormones that I see affect anxiety cyclically, affect teenagers, teenagers around 16, 17, 18 going through stress and exams, also affect women coming up to menopause years. So after 35, 40, 50, you can really feel that anxiety, and also teenage years as well. So estrogen is one of them, progesterone is another, cortisol, your stress hormone, is another hormone, and then testosterone to a degree also does influence how you feel, how you think, your anxiety through the month. So estrogen, let's touch on a minute with excess estrogen. So estrogen is a hormone that does peak mid-cycle, so that's when you ovulate. So what you might find is if estrogen is influencing your hormones, you might find other estrogen dominant symptoms there. You might find bloating, you might find constipation, you might actually suffer from heavy painful periods, you might have endometriosis, fibroids, you might get sore painful breasts around that mid-cycle. So by mid-cycle we're kind of looking at day 14 onwards, so day 14 mid-cycle, first day is the first day of bleed, so day 14 onwards. Now from day 14 onwards, it might start to creep up on you. So it could be a sudden thing, but it might start to creep up on you, waking in the morning with those little heart murmurs, feeling a little bit on edge, feeling a little bit anxious, getting those pins and needly sensations in your hands, that little bit of stress, that kind of adrenaline going through. You might suffer insomnia during this time. Other times you might sleep better, but during this time you might get insomnia. You might just feel a little bit more painful during this time. We know that estrogen dominance causes more pain perception. You might get headaches. You know, there's kind of dull headaches that are around here. That's very much related to the estrogen. So you'll get all that coupled with this heightened sense of anxiety. Now, anxiety is that kind of thinking, those thoughts, too many thoughts in your head, thinking about worrying, thinking about events that are happening and getting anxious about that, and particularly worrying about things that are out of our control that we can't fix in that moment. Now, there is always a good place to worry, you know. I do this a few times. I heat my almond milk up on my stove in the morning. And sometimes on my way to work in the morning, I'm kind of like, did I leave the stove on? Did I leave the stove on? Oh no, and I've had to drive back sometimes. Now that worry's okay because I can action it, but when you're lying in bed at night worrying about something that you actually can't do anything about, that's out of your control, that's the anxiety. That can be pushed by the hormones, and that's definitely a big sign. Lying there for hours, thinking thoughts, but no action. You're not taking any action, you're not doing anything. It's kind of like that worthless worry. So that's what that estrogen picture will look like. And this estrogen dominance anxiety will definitely get worse post-pregnancy, post-babies. Will definitely be worse in your teenage years, when you've got exams, when you're stressed, when your diet might not be fantastic. And it will start to get worse at kind of 45 onwards as well. So just look out for those signs. And if you know that you've been generally an estrogen dominant lady, heavy painful periods, fibroids, endometriosis, even PCOS driven by estrogen, then you're more likely to need to be working on that now. So I would start to work on that so that in the years down the track, menopausal, premenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, you're not having to deal with heightened anxiety. Because I read something the other day about a lady going through menopause, and she was a naturopath, and she was just saying how her body is absolutely not hers anymore. She's kind of out of control. That's coming from a lady that's looked after herself. So it's a really good time ramping up to that kind of menopause, if you know you're estrogen dominant, to start doing something about it now. Start taking these actions, and I will go through them at the end as well. And I've got other Facebook lives on estrogen dominance as well, but I would highly recommend that. Another hormone is progesterone. Progesterone is kind of like your yummy, loving hormone. What progesterone should do is from mid-cycle, day 14, it should start to increase. Now, if some of you have progesterone, if your progesterone is actually too high because you've got hormone resistance due to stress or autoimmune disease, then you might actually get super fatigued during this time, and you won't get anxious. So that's a different sign. You might get so fatigued during this time, so foggy and fatigued, but you won't have that anxiety. But what can happen if you've got a defect in that phase, that luteal phase? Or what can happen if you've got low progesterone, which is very common if you get very stressed a lot of the time, because that puts pressure on your pituitary gland, and then that inhibits you from producing more progesterone. So if from day 14 you've actually got lower progesterone instead of higher progesterone... Oopsie! Hello! I'm back. If during that time, the phone just popped out. Let's see if that holds in okay. Let's see, it's a bit sort of... Ugh. I don't know, it's a bit funny. I know what we'll do. We'll do this. There we go. That's better. It was kind of on a bit of an angle. I'm okay, it's my phone. Oh, I know what it is. I think it's because I've got a new phone and it's not fitting the... I don't want to have to hold it, my arm. I don't think I can hold it. I think that it's too small for the phone, actually. It's kind of popping out. Hi, Sarah. Okay. It's going to pop out again. Whoa. Let's see if I can hold on. Oh, it's very annoying. Okay, let's see if that will hold on. Okay, where was I? Progesterone. So if progesterone is too low, what you will experience, you kind of experience that more on edge. It's like a more on edge symptom. It's an impatient symptom. You'll get irritated quickly at those around you. You'll get very cranky, and you will also, just worried about this. Let's see, I might have to hold it, I'll see. You can see it's kind of moving. Let's see how that goes. Okay, one more try, we'll try. You'll feel that kind of impatience, you'll feel irritated. It's more when someone says something and you just really loathe them. It's that real deep-seated kind of annoyance. And so that's what low progesterone will do. But during that time as well, you'll feel that kind of craving foods. You'll be craving the sugars. You'll be craving the carbohydrates. It's a real sensation for craving foods. And that's because during that time, serotonin is also going low. And so what that's doing is that's causing that feeling of anxiousness. So you may be more anxious because your progesterone is dropping out. Now, normally what happens when we get stressed, we funnel progesterone down, we make it into cortisol. So sometimes that might happen a lot, and then you'll get more anxious. And if it happens and you get completely depleted of progesterone, that's when it leads to fatigue and tiredness. So they can be kind of like, you might swing between that fatigue and that tiredness. But normally with low progesterone, you might have shorter periods. You might have very painful, sore breasts, and you might also get breast lumps as well. That's a huge sign. And a lot of water retention. So progesterone is actually a diuretic. So not enough progesterone in your body, you'll hold on to fluid, you'll get that water retention, you'll bloat. You might actually find that you put on a kilo or 2 overnight at this time in your period because your progesterone's gone so low that you're holding on to fluid. Too much progesterone, you'll be urinating a lot. So you might notice during times in your cycle, when you're peeing a lot more than other times in your cycle, you'll notice that pattern, and that's to do with that progesterone level. So that's another hormone that affects it. Now, cortisol is a huge hormone that affects it. Cortisol is affected by stress. We need cortisol for that kind of fight-flight response. It's really important for that fight-flight response. And we do need that cortisol. Cortisol initiates adrenaline. And what they do is they initiate the glycogen stores in your body. So we use this during exercise. They initiate the glycogen stores in your body. And then what they do, I'm just going to pull this down a little bit, I think. Let's see if I can get this down a little bit, because it's kind of cutting me off, isn't it? There we go, that's a bit better. They initiate the glycogen stores in your body, bring it into your blood supply as glucose, and what that essentially does, you then use that as energy. Now, cortisol will do that, adrenaline will do that. So signs that your cortisol is out of balance, it could be any time during your cycle, but you might find that this happens more so during different parts of your cycle, particularly that mid-cycle onwards, so day 14 onwards. Cortisol will cause you to wake early in the morning. You know, you wake with a start at about 3 a.m. It's kind of like you're up like a light. So it's not so much the insomnia, it's more kind of like this waking up early and not being able to get to sleep. Cortisol will also cause those hot flushes through the night. So very much the hot sweats on the face and the body, definitely under the armpits. If you get the hot sweats behind the back of the head and the neck, just that area, that can often mean a vitamin D deficiency. So just look at that little difference when you do get your hot sweats. But cortisol and adrenaline will cause what we know as hormonal sweats more so than other hormones. If your cortisol is high, you're going to feel more on edge, high alert, running from task to task. You're going to feel like you're busy all the time. You're going to feel like you can't get anything done, and you're just going to be going from A to B to C to D, and it really causes that anxiety. Now, cortisol is the hormone, and I'm going to be talking about this next week because this is a really important topic. Cortisol is the hormone that's really linked to chronic stress, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they're linked to oxytocin. So there is a nice balance about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But when your cortisol's out of balance, when it's high, you're going to be getting those anxiety in terms of rushing from task to task, your heart palpitations, your heart going. You're going to be thirsty all the time. You might be wanting to cry all the time. You're not going to be able to deal so well with situations. And when the cortisol actually drops, it's more of that fatigue, and you might just feel on edge fatigue, on edge of anxiety. So not that kind of running from task to task, but more kind of like that that tired kind of anxiety. That's what you're going to feel. So what cortisol does also before your premenopausal years is it triggers fat storage around your belly. So if you're getting highly stressed, if you're doing the wrong kind of exercise, if you're eating foods that you're intolerant to, that are triggering a cortisol spike, if you're not balancing out your blood sugar, what's essentially going to happen is that cortisol is going to keep spiking, and it just triggers fat storage around your belly. So that can sometimes be an undiagnosed reason why you might be putting fat on around your belly, but the rest of your body is okay. So it can be that stress. So working out whether it's a cortisol issue or a sex hormone issue sometimes takes testing, or just look at your cycle and track your cycle through the month to see what is actually going on. Now, oxytocin is a very, very important hormone, and we actually don't talk about oxytocin enough, and I talk about it quite a lot because it is a really important hormone. And often with chronic stress, traumatic experiences, sexual abuse, post-traumatic stress syndrome, what happens is there becomes this bizarre balance between oxytocin and cortisol. They actually oppose one another, and we should have that kind of interesting balance. And what normally happens if we do go through that traumatic event or have some issue that's happened to us, we get a huge imbalance. Oxytocin drops out, cortisol raises, and then we've just got a whole heap of things that go on that are really difficult to treat and understand the underlying issue unless we know there is an oxytocin issue. Oxytocin is released in abundance during pregnancy, childbirth. You know, you get that rush of oxytocin, and it overfloods, especially with a newborn. Laughter, orgasm, playing, hugging, anything that's enjoyable. Anything that's enjoyable, you'll get those oxytocin rushes. Now, here's some signs of oxytocin deficiency, because sometimes it could be this, and this is what I hear, and I like to say this because I've heard this. A lot of people talk about this and say this. Feeling disconnected, and this is why when you get stressed and with your partner you get irritated, you get agitated, you get down. If cortisol is rising and you're not doing self-care, you're not looking after yourself, and oxytocin's getting higher and higher and higher, oxytocin goes lower and lower and lower, you start to lose your connection with your partner. Huge. It's huge, because you start to lose that connection. Once you mentally, emotionally, spiritually have lost, I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about all those wonderful emotions that keep you connected to the people around you, keep you connected to your loved ones, your family, your children. Once you lose that connection, that's the hardest one to get back. It leaves you with that kind of apathy, that unconnected, and you just assume that you're not in the life you should be in, or you assume you dislike the other person, or that connection's gone. But really, that oxytocin plays a huge part. So I just want you to remember that. That's why self-care is so very important. Constipation, fertility problems, having to have a C-section because you're unable, having induced birth, not being able to orgasm, feeling disconnected, feeling sad all the time, increased pain sensation, increased appetite. Where are we? Okay, I'm gonna have to hold it. Increased appetite. It's just not holding up. Increased appetite, binge eating, tinnitus. These are all signs of oxytocin deficiency. So please bear those in mind. Those are all signs of oxytocin deficiency. Huge. So getting your oxytocin up is huge, is a big one, and that's going to help combat. I know. Not my day. My arm's going to start hurting in a minute, I can tell. I'm going to lean it on there. Oh dear. Funny. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so you know the deal when it comes to self-care. These are some of the things that you can do to help your oxytocin, to help your cortisol, to help your hormones. And the first thing you know, to do is balance your macronutrients. If you start balancing your macronutrients, thank you. Second time, I know. Oh dear. I need to have some self-care after this. It's so annoying. Just simple technology issues, hey? Okay, first of all, you need to balance out your macronutrients. Have 3 meals a day, because what that starts to do is it starts to balance out your estrogen, balance out your testosterone, balance out your cortisol, balance out your other hormones, your leptin, and these have huge impacts on your hormones overall. So you need to be doing that. That's the first thing, the number one thing. Next is obviously the usual, you know, not drinking too much caffeine, having things instead of coffee like green tea, because that's got theanine in and that helps to bring down anxiety. And then you know about doing calming things, you know, deep breathing and slow eating are the two best things you can do to reset your nervous system. So deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. So you go in for 3, hold, out for 3 and hold. And that resets your nervous system. That actually tells your nervous system you're safe. You know, it tells your nervous system there's no danger. If you're a shallow breather, that's actually going to be sending messages to your nervous system that there is danger. There's something about that's dangerous, and that's going to heighten your adrenaline, heighten your cortisol, and then it's just going to cause that kind of cycle again. So deep breathing is key. Another thing that's really quick way to reset your nervous system is eating slowly. Chew your food, eat slowly so that you get the back molars here. And what that will do is that will reset your nervous system as well, because again, you need to be telling your nervous system internally that everything is okay, I'm safe, there's not a saber-toothed tiger, there's not danger. Once you do that, your hormones themselves will naturally come into balance. Next is doing things for oxytocin. So, you know, hugging is one of the best things. Catching up with your friends once a week. Studies show that actually catching up with girlfriends, catching up with women, this goes for guys catching up with women, women catching up with women. It's actually a better way to kind of reset oxytocin. Hugging is a good one, and just doing nice things like play activities, you know, playing with your kids, playing with your friends, just doing fun things maybe you wouldn't do. Last week I went to Gold Coast and I went to the trampoline park, and you know, it was fun. I couldn't do all the major trampoline things, but you know, it was fun to just jump around, and that really helps to boost your oxytocin as well. And touch, I tell this again and again and again, you see animals in the wild touching all the time, little birds with their beaks touching, monkeys touching all the time, cows rubbing themselves on one another, and essentially we are animals. And so just touching, just making sure you're having that touch with your kids, your partner, your friend, you know, just a hand on the arm, and that's going to help your oxytocin levels as well. Now, those are kind of all the lifestyle things, and of course doing affirmations, doing calm visualizations, particularly if your anxiety is so bad. Visualize yourself kind of in the day, visualize yourself being calm, visualize yourself going through the day and being calm. Okay, now I want to talk about supplements, because there are some really cool supplements that help with anxiety, that can really help with insomnia and kind of that hormone-based anxiety as well. So I want to talk about calcium and magnesium together. So if you find that you don't sleep, if you find you get a lot of cramps, if you find you get those kind of heart palpitations and those endless sort of thoughts, calcium and magnesium combined can do beautiful, they can do wonders. You know, I love Blackmore's tissue salt, CPMP. They're just a really low dose calcium magnesium, but a couple of those can really take the edge off and relax you nicely. So I love that for relaxation, and obviously an Epsom salt bath. Another one is theanine. So theanine is a calming amino acid that is actually found in green tea and black tea. But the beautiful thing about theanine is it helps everything else cross the blood-brain barrier. So it actually helps with your endorphins, it helps with GABA, it helps reduce glutamate. Wonderful. If you really get a lot of anxiety, or if you know that coffee, you react to coffee, you get heart palpitations, that can be a sign that you're actually low in theanine. So that can work out quite nicely as well. Now, if you get anxiety, if you get insomnia mid-cycle related to your cycle, you can't sleep, you can take a little bit of melatonin about day 14 up to your period. So for about 5 or 6 days, you can take melatonin. Don't take melatonin every single day, because what it's going to cause is going to cause a dopamine issue. And don't go higher than 1 milligram. If you go higher in melatonin, it's going to cause a dopamine kind of rush in your brain the next day, and then that's going to cause issues with your endorphins. So go about 1 milligram of melatonin. Maximum 3. You can always cut like a 3 if you've got tablets of 3, cut it in half, but 1 to 3, but definitely 1 is better. Once a night for a few nights during your mid-cycle, and that's going to help with your insomnia, that's going to help with your anxiety during that time period, just not every day. Another thing I absolutely love, this is fantastic for postmenopausal women or any women suffering that kind of mid-cycle anxiety as well, is GABA and niacin. GABA is a beautiful inhibitory neurotransmitter. GABA calms you down, and if you remember, I did a Facebook Live on GABA on estrogen, and estrogen and progesterone actually help with the balance of GABA in the brain. Too much estrogen causes glutamate issue, and glutamate is excitatory. So you might find that during this mid-cycle, this estrogen dominance, you're getting sensitive to things, you're getting hyperactive, you're getting ADD symptoms, you're getting paranoid, you're getting anxious. And so take the GABA along with niacin, about 25 milligrams. You may get a bit of a flush from the niacin, but see how you go with 25 milligrams. If you don't get a flush, just go up by about 25 milligrams every single day. But the GABA with the niacin is a beautiful combo for that anxiety. Thanks, Sam. Thanks. Looking forward to seeing when your infrared sauna place is up and running. Let us know. Okay. So now that I've gone through those, Sarah said she struggled with the first part of this, but not really early waking. I do feel too busy though, don't get those symptoms, but I'm tired, stressed with normal family, yeah. So definitely that can be those kind of cortisol issues. And what you might find is you just might find that extra stress now and again, but definitely if you're tired, you can do things to help and reset cortisol, you know, that are quite simple. So vitamin C is a great thing to reset cortisol. You can actually do vitamin C about for about 5 to 6 days. Do a high dose vitamin C. Do about 6,000 to 8,000 milligrams of vitamin C in divided doses through the day, and that actually helps to reset your cortisol levels. That's great, Sarah, if you've been actually struggling with your cortisol, feeling fatigued, maybe just feeling like you need that little bit of an extra helping hand, but not actually suffering from anxiety. So that's something I would advise that you do. So there we go. Those are the hormones that really have a huge impact. My arm's starting to struggle now. Can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah, my arm's starting to shake. Oh. There we go. Okay, so we've talked about estrogen, we talked about progesterone, we talked about cortisol, we've talked about oxytocin, what you can do in your lifestyle, you know, calming, deep breathing, and, you know, doing affirmations, balancing your meals, so making sure you're having some, you know, balanced meals with your protein, your carb, and your fats. And then these supplements that you can add in if you need to, you know, calcium, magnesium, GABA with niacin, beautiful mix if you really suffer from anxiety and you suffer from insomnia as well. Theanine I absolutely love. And then just maybe something like a little bit of melatonin mid-cycle. Then if you do have some cortisol issues, like I mentioned, doing the high dose vitamin C can be really helpful. So I hope that helped. I'm going to have to go now because my arm's hurting. Oh dear, but I hope that helped. Look, if you've got any more questions or I didn't cover anything, just pop them below. Next week I'm going to be talking about your hormones and actually the influence on chronic stress, but particularly I want to talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome. Really want to talk about that and talk about how that can affect your hormones and what you can do to help it, particularly chronic. So I'll chat to you next week. Bye bye.